Angus Taylor, thank you so much for joining the Daily Aus.
Great to be with you and thanks for having me.
So you're the Shadow Treasurer. For those who don't know what you do you want to just explain it?
Yeah, so there's two sides in politics, the government and the opposition. And right now we're in opposition and there's matching roles on either side. Of course, the leaders, Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese, and then the Treasurer and myself, who are opposite numbers. And so I hold the government to account is my job on economic matters, treasury matters. And of course, that's been incredibly important over the last couple of years because the economy has been front and centre in people's lives with the cost of living crisis we've been facing.
Now, we know that the economy will be the top issue for many young people this election. How would a coalition government improve the lives of young people when it comes to the cost of living?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've seen inflation in this country slower to come down than most of our peer countries, and our growth has been slow, particularly growth per person, and that means incomes haven't risen. In fact, they've gone back on average in real terms by about 8%. So that
means... In the
means,
past 12 months, though, wages have outpaced inflation.
Well, it depends who you are. For a lot of people, it hasn't.
Well, according to ABS.
So over the last 2.5 years, and that's kind of the relevant period we're looking at, we've seen for working people, the typical income increase has been around half of the price increase. Our economy is not working for hardworking Australians right across the board. Those who are out working every day for their income, they've really suffered. And that's young people, of course.
And in terms of policies that the coalition is proposing to help young people, what are they?
Well, so right at the heart of this is if we're going to make our standard of living go up, we need to beat inflation. So prices have got to go up at a slower rate than incomes. And I don't think that war is over yet. Inflation is incredibly corrosive, and absolutely key to this for younger people is fixing the housing crisis we've got in this country, where we haven't had enough houses, nowhere near enough, given the growth we've seen in our population, about half of what we needed over the last 3 years. We've got to get more supply into the market and make it easier for young people to buy a house or to rent a house.
And how will you make it easier for young people?
Well, I'll start with the supply side. So we've already announced a $5 billion fund, which is about breaking the infrastructure bottlenecks that hold back building houses. We think that'll get 500,000 new houses into the market, and with a particular focus on first home buyers.
I want to move to tax cuts. Labor has introduced a tax cut for all taxpayers. The coalition is against that tax cut and would repeal it if it gets into power. Why?
Well, because we don't think that's genuine tax reform that over the long term is going to deal with the underlying issues in our tax system. The government's approach is a 70 cents a day in 15 months' time. That's not going to provide cost of living relief for people immediately. And so we think it's the wrong answer. We do think there is a need for reform to our tax system over time, but we've got to repair the budget first.
I've heard you say before that under Labor, Australians are paying more tax at the moment.
Yeah.
But why is that when there have been tax cuts?
It's a great question because that's what inflation does. So if you look at the history of periods of inflation, it's really good for government budgets because taxes go up with inflation. Your income
because of the wages going up.
Your income goes up, but prices go up more, as I said earlier. So to give you a sense of the numbers, if you're a young Australian between 18 and 25, you've seen in the last 2.5 years or so a $3,500 increase in personal income taxes being paid.
But then are you saying that wages are going up too quickly?
No, we want wages going up. We want wages going up faster than prices. And this is the
Which in the last 12 months they have.
Well, depends on the group and at best barely so. I mean, as I say, for the typical Australian household, the reduction over the last 2.5 years has been 8%.
And you're saying that Australians are paying more tax, but just to be clear, you are against a tax cut.
Well, no, we want to see lower taxes over time. And the key and the most important thing you can do to avoid higher taxes is to beat inflation. That helps you to have a higher real income.
Which we kind of are now because we are within the target range.
You know what? There's no. I think there's very few economists who have complete confidence that we're there sustainably. We've got to be there sustainably.
On track.
It's like, inflation is like cockroaches. Until you've got rid of the last one, you don't know that they're gone. And that's been the history. By the way, the Reserve Bank confirmed that in their statement earlier this week, where they said there's still great uncertainty and very real risk of a surge of inflation coming in the future.
I want to move to HECS, which is another big cost of living issue for young people. Labor has a plan to wipe student debts by 20%. I understand the coalition is against this, but does the coalition have a plan to make any changes to the HECS system?
Yeah, so the biggest issue here, and I was the first generation that had HECS, and I was supportive of it because I felt I was going to get a university degree, and that gave me advantages, and I kind of thought that's fair enough. You'd
have to be one of the only people that welcomed the debt.
Well, I just felt it was fair.
But in terms of a policy that the coalition might introduce.
So I'll come to that. We want to make it easier for all young people to buy a home. Not just those with a university degree. We do, of course, want to make it easier for them to buy a home, but also tradies and others who choose not to have a university degree. And that's why our policies in this area are absolutely focused on all young people.
So when it comes to young people, no change to HECS, but we're helping them more with housing is what you're saying.
Correct, 100%.
I want to look at the declining birth rate. Your colleague Matt Canavan recently spoke to TDA about a policy he's proposing to help the declining birth rate in Australia. So he wants to offer couples a loan of $100,000 once they have their first child to help buy their first home. And that loan would then be wiped if they have 3 children. What do you think of that policy?
Well, it's not our policy, but I think the intent...
But as a suggestion from your colleague.
The intent, actually, I think is... Right, I mean, not everyone wants to have a family, and that's fine too. But we want to make sure that people feel as though they can have a family, and it's not too big a barrier. We know around the world one of the biggest factors that helps people to feel as though they can have a family is owning a home. We know that. And that's why I completely agree with Matt's intent there.
So just broadly, do you see the declining birth rate as a problem specifically for the Australian economy?
Well, I think it is an issue. Yeah, I really do. And it's not confined to Australia. We see it in other countries. I mean, countries like South Korea, it's diabolically low. I mean, I don't think we should tell people how to make their own choices about these things. Everyone will have a different view about whether they want to have a family, but we need to make sure they feel as though they have the choice. And I think a lot of younger Australians are feeling as though that choice has got harder and harder. So I do think this is incredibly important. I do think home ownership is really the key and the one thing that government can play a role in trying to facilitate.
So to be clear, your solution to the declining birth rate is the home ownership
home ownership, I think,
before.
Is absolute. And that's where I completely agree with what Matt had to say.
I want to talk about the public service. So part of the coalition's plan to save money is to cut down the public service. The coalition has said it intends to reduce the workforce of the public sector by 41,000. Which departments in the public service will be at risk? Yeah,
so the focus here is not on the frontline services, but there's a significant part of the public service that's not doing frontline services, and we think that can be more efficient. We've seen 41,000 additional public servants since Labor's come to power, so that's just over 2.5 years, close to 3 years. So it's very, very rapid growth. We think natural attrition can play a big role because the public service is now very big.
I don't know just on the natural attrition, I don't know if a lot of people know what that means.
Oh, so that means when people just naturally leave the job, you don't replace them or you move people around to deal with it. So this is what I want to drive. I've learned over the course of my career that a bigger team is not always a better team. We want to empower public servants. We've got tremendous people in the public service in Australia to get on and do their jobs, to move in and out of the private sector. It's a different looking public sector, but I think it's one that's a much more exciting place to work and can get a lot more done. And we don't need it to be bigger.
We've obviously seen a similar approach be taken in the US. Are you drawing from the example that has been set by President Donald Trump and Elon Musk?
No, absolutely not. I mean, we're doing this in a way which is right for Australia, I think is a very different model to what the US is going down. We want to empower our best public servants to do their job better. And I think that's what most public servants want to do.
So you're saying you're not drawing from the example set by President Donald Trump, but the coalition has created a new portfolio called the Shadow Minister for Government Efficiency, which is obviously very similar to Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. Are you saying they're not related?
Well, no. I'll give you an illustration of how they're different. So Musk, of course, is not an elected official, whereas Jacinta Price will be that minister. She's an elected senator and she's part of our parliament. So it's a very different model we're talking about here.
Sorry to go on about it, but Shadow Minister for Government Efficiency and Department of Government Efficiency, you're saying those are a coincidence, that they're called the same thing?
Well, we want to see a better, more efficient government in this country for every single taxpayer, and we want to empower public servants to be their absolute best. That's my approach.
Final question. Recently, there has been a lot of conversation about new media and influencers and their role in the federal election. What's your take on that debate?
Well, I mean, I've got no problem with influencers. I think what's really important, though, is that our media remains strongly fact-based and informs people of what's going on, which is, you're doing that in marvellous and innovative ways, and you've clearly connected to an audience really effectively doing that. And we want to see more of that, not less.
Your leader, Peter Dutton, has rejected our request for an interview. Why do you think that is?
Oh, you'd have to ask them.
I've tried.
Okay.
He won't answer.
I'll see if I can help with that. But I mean, I think what you're doing is really important. So well done on what you're doing.
Thank you. So you'll help us get Peter Dutton?
I'll do my best.
Angus Taylor, thank you so much.
Great to be with you, Bill.